Type Podcast.
Here we go. Hello, around the block and around the world. This is where we discuss, debate, and deliberate all things diabetes. Representing type 2, my name is Dobie Maxwell. Representing type 1, the vivacious, effervescent, always in the know, Ms. Sami Parker. We'll get to Sami in seconds, but first, today's episode of Just My Type is brought to you by the Diabetes app, a free social community app that brings together both type 1 and type 2 diabetics, plus their supporters. You can find community, resources, and Sami and me on the Diabetes app. I don't want to brag, but I'm coming to you after walking 9,487 steps and the step challenge today.
Say that again, Dobie. How many?
9,487.
Okay, I just want to point out I did 9,488. Just kidding. One more step.
Well, you know what?
than
89. I'm stepping around the dead as I do it, but even hovering around 10,000, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I remember I'd kind of been out of shape and we started doing this thing, and I got to tell you, for 5,000, I'm breathing, and then 6 to 8. Now I'm up to 9, getting close to 10. And
That's good. Hey, I'm proud of you.
When I first got diagnosed back then, I was afraid. I thought I was going to, is this a death sentence? I have no idea. So I would walk, all over Chicago.
I mean, I think it's the best thing because honestly, which today's episode topic is called Salty Sugars.
Salty Sugars. That's a rapper, isn't it? Biggie Smalls, Salty Sugars.
It sounds like salt and pepper, but like salty sugars.
Well, you know what? I give you full credit when credit is due. You came up with the D card, and I've been passing them out. Elizabeth, our producer, she gave us some, and I don't know if you're passing yours out, but I'm passing out, and I explain, listen to our show, just pulling the D card, blah, blah, blah. People love it. This is the next thing. You should work at an ad agency. I love this. And tell us about Salty Sugars. Sugars. Is it Sugazz? Is it the rap spelling?
Duh. Sugars. So a salty sugar, let me define it how I defined it. I came up with my own definition because it was driving me crazy that I couldn't think of a word to describe high blood sugars from this. So a salty sugar is a high blood sugar that results from anxiety, anger, sadness, emotional trauma, or any very quick roller coaster range of emotions. And a salty sugar means it's very stubborn. It's like, I do not want to come down. My blood sugar is staying at 220, and she is not budging.
She, so like a boat or a car, it's a she?
No, I just refer to a lot of things as she, like, oh, she's here. She's out to play. It really might not even be a she, or it's not a person, but I use a pronoun on accident. I'm just like I say, she is not having it today. And I'm talking about my hair.
Oh.
People are like, who's she? And I'm like, my hair. She's just not having it.
Whitney Houston used to refer to her voice as that. The old girl. She said, sometimes I got the old girl shows up, sometimes she doesn't.
Okay.
Meant her voice.
Then I'm going to say she's always out to play for me because I feel like I always have a...
Now, did anything bring this on? Did any event in your life maybe happen that you thought, I'm going to come up with this? Or did just kind of...
Yes. It's fresh off the press, too.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. It actually is, though. But I... sometimes relationships just don't go the way they are planned. And
they never go the way they're planned, Sami. You're a young, attractive young
lady. You can
lady.
love somebody so much.
But you still have hopes and dreams.
Yes.
Now, a battered, grizzled old soul like me is pretty much giving up hope. You're picking fruit off the tree. You can have any man you want in your lexicon. I pretty much am kicking the pears and the peaches that fell off the tree.
No, I just
tell us.
I'm coming off of a recent breakup, unfortunately, but the ex-boyfriend was very great guy, awesome guy. Just we were in different phases kind of and had to figure out our own things in life in order to really be able to give each other 150%. But yeah, it's always tough. And so the first 2 days for me, that was my first heartbreak. No matter how hard it is, or no matter if you see things that you're like, okay, I was compromising XYZ, but at the end of the day, it's still really hard. So for me, my blood sugars, when I started crying, 2 nights in a row, just literally went from 120 straight up to 240. And they just would sit there while I was crying. And I couldn't help it. I was like, I've never felt like this. It feels like a loss. Mm-hmm. But they just, they stayed at 240. And I literally, they did not come down until I went to sleep. And after I was asleep, then the next morning I woke up and looked, and they came down after because I took insulin before I went to bed. And then as soon as the crying stopped and my body was resting, they came back down. But that was a salty sugar. I say salty because I don't know if you've ever heard this, but people are like, oh, she was acting salty. Or yeah, no, he was being salty to me. It was why are you acting?
I know you look up in the dictionary the word salty, and my picture is there. I am Mr.
You are
Salty. I
Mr.
should be a
Salty.
pretzel. I am that salty.
Dobie is the salty man. Yeah, you could be salty to somebody. You could be salty to a girl you want on a date with. Like, I'm acting a little salty to her, which means like I'm just like not being super nice and I don't really want to deal with it. And so salty sugar is like sugar that's not being nice to you. So instead of saying now like I have high blood sugars, because honestly, like that's boring. Like saying my blood sugars are high. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, I have salty sugars today.
Well, I think, again, very innovative. I
Thanks.
love this. I give you full credit for it. But you can't tell me that people listening here, I don't know what the percentages of listeners or where they are. Everybody goes through a breakup. So
Yes.
somebody listening to this episode right now is going through a salty sugar. It doesn't have to be a breakup, too. That's just the example that you used.
Yeah, I know. But I will say the best way to overcome it, and I think it's something that it's really hard to, but like get back on your 2 feet. And it might hurt and it's really hard, but I kind of think to myself, and maybe this is from the diabetes, but everybody who's listening and is diabetic, I hope that they can kind of understand. It's like if you're dealing with diabetes every day and you're able to deal with that, and it's sad because a lot of people who have diabetes end up having serious health stuff and serious health complications, and it's scary. So to me, it's like, okay, I could sit in my bed and you can wallow, or you can, and it's okay. You're supposed to feel how you want to feel. Like that's so healthy to feel you want to feel. But also, there's so much life to be lived. And with diabetes, you don't always know how much life you have to live. So it's one of those things that it's like, why waste a great day of sun or a great day of clouds or whatever it is? But why waste the day when you have so much life to live and then your sugars are not salty anymore?
And then you hope that low life shiz kicker gets in a head on accident. No, I'm kidding.
No,
Okay.
Dobie.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. But what I'm not joking about is, would you agree with this, Sammy? And I think you will, that the relationships are hard anyway, but the
Yes.
intensity of emotions messes with your body chemistry, in
Totally.
turn your blood sugar, and affects your diabetes. That's the whole root I'm trying to get to here, because I think you're totally right. And maybe if a relationship is just one example, but there are others.
Oh, it's so many. Even high blood sugars. It could be like if you were stressed out about when you were younger, stressed out about like paying bills and your blood sugars, you might not even have known when you were first diagnosed. But let's say you were diagnosed, and how old did you say you were diagnosed at again? I'm
I
forgetting.
was in my 40s. I don't remember
Okay.
exactly. 44, 45, something like that.
So let's say you went through like a really period where you were really stressed out about finances or like paying bills or whatever.
Mhm.
And you were like, oh, I just feel really off. I'm really down. I feel kind of like depressed in a way, but yet like you also just felt like tired, fatigued, you had a headache. Guarantee your blood sugars were running higher because of the stress. And that's called a salty sugar.
No, I'm saying it was a perfect example when you brought it up, because as a comedian, I have to get to work far away.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason this can relate to listeners is, in this day and age, in the 21st century, relationships have always been tough, not taking anything away from that. But the commute, if you live in any kind of, even a medium sized city now, not even a big city, there's so many cars and there's so much traffic back up and it's stress and you got to get there. Well, I have to be at work. And sometimes, most people drive 30 to 45 minutes to work an 8 to 10 hour shift at a typical job. For me, I got to drive 8 to 10 hours to work a 30 to 45 minute shift. Sometimes I'll get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and my job for 30 minutes or 45 minutes that night is 4 states away. So I have to drive through 3 or 4 major cities, and somebody runs out of gas or there's a detour or something. So I'm literally thinking, okay, I have to be on stage in 30 minutes. I am 22 miles from the town that I'm in. Thank goodness I have a cell phone now, before I didn't years ago.
Yeah.
But there's just constant stress, and it's slow burn,
Yeah.
constant stress. Talk about salty sugars. Then I have to get to a place I've probably never been to before, get on stage, make people laugh for 30 to 45 minutes. No stress there. I mean, I've been doing it a long time, but it doesn't mean it's not difficult. And then the giant letdown after the show. I'm in a hotel. I've driven for 8, 9, 10 hours, and now I'm hungry. Well, of course, there is a chef making fresh salads in the hotel that I'm at that's giving me these diabetic-friendly, low-carb meal. No, I go to a drive-through window. I get something greasy and nasty because it tastes good, and then I wash it down with something sugary, because it tastes good. And I go to sleep with 0 exercise and all stress. So I'm not making fun of your situation, but this is salty sugars in a completely different direction.
It's like school. Okay. I was in college. I'd be like studying, and I'd be like, it'd be 1 a.m. And by 1 a.m., my blood sugars freaking crept up to the wazoo. And I'd be like, yeah, this is great. I'm just 330 and over here trying to study chemistry. But what's 330? What's another number just as high?
Yeah, that's a
Like
big one.
they were salty. They were salty sugars. I was like, people wouldn't understand. They're like, well, Sammy, yeah, it's chemistry. Like, what did you expect? I'm like, no, you guys don't understand, little biznatches. I'm dealing with sugars
You biznatches.
are 330. And no, I'm sorry. My brain is not looking at the volume of iron when it, I don't even know, blows up with magnesium, whatever chemistry is, honestly, I forget. But like, you get my point. It would be ridiculous. And then I'd be like, 330 to 400. And then the next day I'd wake up and they were normal. And then as soon as I was about to go in for my test, and then I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now?
I got a question. Getting back to the ex. I mean, I'm not going to trash him. I never met him, and we all,
No,
you look back in a situation like that.
Great guy. He's a great
No,
guy.
I'm sure he is. You wouldn't have picked him if you was. Sometimes we pick bad ones, but I don't think. The question I have for you, now, if you envision, you knew him long enough, just so you know his ins and outs, and he knew your ins and outs.
Mhm.
Had you had a longer term relationship, long years, do you think diabetes would have been a factor long term in a negative way?
So if I'm going to be completely honest, and
That's what we want.
the last 2-3 months, I felt like sorry, I'm slowly saying it because I'm trying to articulate it right, but my blood sugars had been pretty brutal. So I felt like I was really insulin resistant. They were staying at like 250 and 300 after I was eating something. And like even right now, I just showed you my blood sugars went really high and now they're coming back down. Well, the last 2-3 months, they've been going really high and then just staying high. And they wouldn't come down. And I knew that was because my cortisol levels, which is like a release when you're stressed or like fatigued, any of that, were pretty high, which was causing me to be resistant. So like I knew there was a reason for that. I honestly didn't know why. And I didn't realize that, I knew that I always had these moments that I was like wrestling with, like, is this the right person? Is this the one I'm supposed to be with? Do I deserve more? Or should I like be compromising this much? Should he be compromising more? Why am I making an excuse for everything? Why do I feel like so empathetic that I feel like I need to like take care of this situation? Or why is my heart aching for him? Like, it's like that whole thing and my brain didn't stop. And I really believe that is why my blood sugars were so tough the last 2 months. So the answer to your question is yes. I do think it would have affected me negatively because it had been. And I'm not even going to lie, as much as it's been hard, like really hard, but my numbers have come down from staying at 300. Like honestly, even like for a day, they've been coming back down. Like even they'll go up and then they come back down.
Sure.
And that was not happening. And I really believe, I like made excuses thinking it was hormones, but I really believe it was because I was stressed and I didn't know how to separate like loving somebody so much versus like a successful relationship where like you both can give.
I am totally with you. I'm not making fun of it anyway, because I know somebody listening can relate to this.
Yeah. And so I do think it negatively would have impacted my health going forward because there was too many things that I was questioning and trying to walk around because my biggest thing is I never want to be a burden to people. And I didn't feel like a burden, but it was my own issue.
Now, see, that's where we differ, Sammy. You and I, we're alike in a lot of ways. I want to be a burden to everybody. I want to be so old and crotchety that people come into my room when I'm in the home and I'm drooling and I'm passing gas and I don't eat all my food and I'm just a mess and you got to go in his room again. I don't know why that just appeals to me. I do want to be.
Yeah. Hey, all power to you.
That's exactly. No, seriously, my grandpa raised me. And if you're a listener to our show, and we thank you for that, you're going to hear me refer to my grandpa my whole life. And he told me as a kid, he said, there's a lot of pretty girls in the world. He goes, you got to pick one that you're going to be with for a long time. And whatever you don't like, because she'll not like something about you, whatever you don't like about her, it's going to get worse by 10 times the minute you get married.
That's what my mom says. And I'm like, and that kind of concerned me.
Annoying laugh. Is he sloppy? She sloppy? Whatever. I'm not blaming he or she, but we all have our little quirks and things. Now, to me, are you a smoker?
No.
Okay. I'm not. And
I've never smoked.
I never did either. And I just, for whatever reason, I didn't. And some people, smoking, I can't. There's always a deal breaker in a relationship. To me, I don't like if somebody smokes. Elizabeth said she never did either. She does heroin. She does heroin between her toes, but it's good Canadian heroin. No, I'm kidding. No.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
She's laughing. So no, seriously though, it wouldn't be a deal breaker. If I was with somebody and she smoked, I said, I love you, honey. Take your butt, hang it outside the car window, smoke, go outside the bedroom, don't smoke. But it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. But some people it would. So 10 times after we got married, I can live with that. Some people can't.
No, I think it's something too of like some people like can't. And I think that's something that's really significant as well with that, because I think it's really important too. You have a partner that is able to fully give attention to your health.
Sure. And wants to.
Dobie just said it, keyword, wants to.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And for people listening, I think that's something that I'm like, make sure. Make sure it's not just part of the tag, but it's always. And that might sound selfish, but diabetes is something you have to be selfish with. I said that. That's a character trait. Shout out to How to Be a Die Badass. That's a character trait. Be selfish.
Listen to our episode, How to Be a Die Badass.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think you train yourself to look for the right person? And when you're not looking, that person comes. But we all have stress. Not just, I'm sorry you're going through that now. It's the relationship.
No, it's
what
okay.
did Sheryl Crow say? First cut is the deepest, baby. You look back in 2 years, I was worried about that guy. But it's human nature, human emotion, especially for women. I don't want to be sexist, but women are emotionally involved with the guy. Guys are like, oh, she looks good.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's literally science.
Yeah. And you move on and it hurts. And so, but you go to the next thing. But I just think that in any facet of life, there is stress. And as time goes on, I deal with depression. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a quick break right now. This is the Just My Type, the diabetes podcast. I so like when we just riff. Sammy, you're going to learn about me. We're just peeling the onions. She's Sammy Parker, type 1. I'm Dobie Maxwell, type 2. This, Just My Type. We are coming right back. Please stay tuned. The Diabetes app is an online community platform that was created to help people living with diabetes find support and information in one spot.
And on the Diabetes app, you can join groups and connect with other people all over the world who are also living with diabetes. I mean, for me, whenever I have a bad day, I find myself scrolling through the mental wellness group, just to reassure myself that I'm not alone.
The Diabetes app has a resource section where you can find articles, recipes, tips, and tricks for managing your diabetes. Download the Diabetes app today and connect with us right on the app.
DiaStrong is an online telehealth platform that connects you to medical and holistic professionals to help you manage your diabetes. Find registered dietitians, nutritionists, certified diabetes educators, and more without the hassle of having to go into a doctor's office.
Wait. You mean a lazy bum like me can have appointments right from my computer? Sign me up.
That's right, Dobie. And this week, our listeners can use promo code JMT25 for 25% off their first visit.
Yeah, don't try to cheat and go to JMT26 because you're not going to get 26. It's 25. Go to www.diastronghealth.com. That's www.diastronghealth.com. We're back. Just My Type. I'm Dobie Maxwell. She is Sammy Parker. Sammy, I love the stuff you come up with. I got to be honest with you. D-Card, huge hit. This one, I think, is going to be bigger. Salty Sugars. It's not, to me, it sounds like a rapper. It sounds like a character. I love it. But it's got depth. It's got points. I'm sorry you're going through the breakup that you're going with, but you're going to get the dream guy.
No, it's
going to
okay.
come down to you. But what I want to know is, how do you think people can cope with their salty sugars? How do you think?
Okay, so I think the first thing to recognize salty sugars, first off, if you're like, I have not done anything crazy, I'm not in my hormones aren't going weird for girls, and you're like, I don't know why, but you feel stressed out, recognize that's probably what it is. And sometimes I wanted to fight it and be like, I'm not that stressed. Like, what? No, that's not the reason. Like, but recognize it. And ways to like cope with it and get out of it is like, go on a walk, listen to the Benefits of Walking episode. Like, I promise you, join us in talking about it. It will help salty sugars. Always does for me. Number 2, like drink a lot of water and tea. That's another thing. It helps by just soothing the body, which calms your cortisol levels. Another one, take your mind off of it. Don't look at your blood sugars if you're type 1. If you're type 2, don't consciously be thinking, can I eat this banana or is my blood sugar going to go high? Like separate it and be like, you know what? I'm going to just live these 3 hours for myself and pretend I don't have diabetes for a second. Because you need to escape from it. But I also think, Dobie, like, and I know you know what I'm saying, there's a room for healing and for growth. And like, you have to also accept, okay, today's just gonna be a tough day. My blood sugar's gonna be high. And I need to accept it and just like allow myself to feel.
Yeah, but don't you think it's almost like bracing for a fall? If you know the fall is coming, you can brace for it. We just get knocked on your face and it's like, oh man, that really hurt. Because we're going through salty sugars every day in some way, shape, or form. We're just bringing up a couple of examples. There's limitless ways that this can happen.
What do you feel like the best way for you to cope with it or kind of accept it is?
I'm a loner. I've always been a loner. And I think that is the wrong way to be because sometimes you could just sit and stew and bubble. I think to have somebody to talk to, for me, you ask me, I want to talk it out. You know, and I have a couple people. I have a cousin.
Talking it out is great.
Yeah, but you got to have a person that gives a shiz.
I give a shiz. I'll listen.
I know you do. Well, hopefully we're doing it here and we're doing it on a podcast. But you know what I mean? That's what a mate is for, right? In a perfect world. I mean, everybody looks good. Oh, they're cute. They're hot. They're sexy, whatever. But then peeling the onion comes out and then you see the real person. on both sides. And then one day you just come and say, oh, that's not the person that I was attracted to. So you got to deal with the warts and all.
Yeah, the salty sugars though, they get you. But I think accepting and giving yourself grace on it is a very big part.
Yeah, forgive yourself.
But I like the term.
I love the
I
term.
think it's
I'm
funny.
telling you, we gotta patent this. I can totally see this on the hats.
Like, oh, I got salty sugars, guys. This sucks. Like, it's funny.
Salty sugars. I think it should be a cartoon character.
It's like pulling the D card. That episode was so successful because it's so true and relatable.
Exactly right. And I tell people that listen to our show yet, but they're, oh, I'm interested in that. So we've got this thing, pulling the D card. And then Elizabeth, our producer, gave us some. So here's a D card.
Yeah.
I don't have diabetes. Well, you know somebody that does, give it to them. So
Yep.
they can, and I explain what it is. And it's a package. It works. So again, if it can be fun to have salty sugars, I think there's a pendulum the other way too, when it's going right. So you appreciate when life goes good. Don't you think? I've always been that way. Again, I go to my gramps.
Yeah, I think it's like, okay, we need salty sugars, and then maybe we need to come up with another one for like good sugars. Maybe that's like sweet sugars. And that's like when everything's going the way you want.
It's in a groove, but seriously, neither one lasts forever.
No.
Again, depression's been my thing, and the older I get, for so long, I'm sure it is diabetic related, and I didn't really realize that for so long.
Well, you just said it never goes either way, and this is funny. This is a side note, but there's a couple people's Instagrams, and they all name their Instagram something different because they all don't want to you can't have the same username, so they fake it. But it's called Bittersweet Beats, and there's all these people that have bittersweet beats or bittersweet diabetes. It's always like that because it rhymes. And it's really some days they're great and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I'm living my best life. Look at me go. And then the next minute you might be like, oh my God, I hate this disease. This sucks. My blood sugars are high.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bittersweet roller coaster. It's like
bipolar roller coaster.
It's like peanut butter jelly, and peanut butter's so good, but you're like, where? I ran out of jelly.
I put ketchup on instead. It doesn't match. It's got to be peanut butter or jelly. I like to look at it as a revolving apple. Life is a revolving apple, and there's a worm in that apple.
Okay.
And it revolves, and you got a good apple, good apple, good apple, good apple, and the worm always comes back. I look at depression that way. And I don't know how it is for you as a creative entity person. I've always been that way.
Okay.
I know that I'm at my lowest of lows, that the pendulum's going to swing, and I will have a creative surge. I've written some of my best jokes. I've, things went after the depression. And sometimes it lasts 3, 4, 5 days, and then I come out of it, and I know I'm going to have it as a high. Maybe it's bipolar. That word is scary. We haven't, talk about mental health. Look at our episode about that. But I just think too, it's got to be diabetic related too. So the salty sugars, the emotions, whatever. I think that it's the intensification of emotions. Would that be a way to define it? And I think we all have that.
Yes, salty sugars, intensification of emotions relating to blood sugars.
Yes. And it's a byproduct of the blood sugars.
It's kind of like a tether ball. You know a tether ball? And it goes around and around and around, and then it makes it back to the center. But you can go either to the right, like clockwise, or counterclockwise. Mm-hmm. Those tether ball coins?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the ball that swings around.
I totally remember those.
Those are so fun, but they go back and forth. And 1 minute you're like, yes, I'm going counterclockwise, which means I'm winning. And the next minute you're like, oh, crap, it's going clockwise, which means I'm losing. That's like blood sugars.
This is a reference that you're not going to know, but your dad will, and anybody your dad's age or my age that's listening will. Kenny Rogers. You ever hear a guy named Kenny Rogers? He was a famous singer. And
I know Kenny Rogers.
Well, he passed away, and I got a chance to meet him at a radio show that I hosted, and he came through town.
Wow, that's really
And he
sick.
said, I never get really too down or too high because I've been doing it for so long. If I'm up and I got a hit on the radio and I'm doing really well, I know it's not going to last forever. And if I'm down and I don't have a hit, I know what's going to come along. So he goes, my life for 40 years in a career has always been pretty equal. So I don't care what generation you're from, who's famous or not. If you have that attitude, I think it can really help. That hopefully, if that's one point of this episode, we can pass along.
Yes.
Salty sugars, it's okay to have them, but they're not going to last forever.
No.
Sami, we're at the end of another episode, and they're always fun. I love when we have guests. I love when we have facts. But today, we kind of riffed from the heart, and that's fun, too.
Yeah. No, I like it. I get deep down and dirty with it.
Well, that's what we are. Hopefully, you're exercising and getting rid of your salty sugars with AZZ.
Yeah.
So we have a question in the pod, Sami. What is it?
How do you deal with salty sugars, or have you had salty sugars? And please share, rate, review, subscribe. We would love a 5-star rating and review to get this diabetes community to grow together. But again, you can find us on our social media on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at JustMyTypePod _ Facebook, Just My Type Pod, and our hashtag Just My Type Pod.
And a shout out for the show today from Phoenix, Arizona, in the good old US of A. Chuck Field is listening to us. He said, I love your show.
Chuck.
Chuck is a ventriloquist of all things, and his lips are moving when he's listening.
Whoa,
I know he is.
that's
He's a great
cool.
guy. He loves the show. He said, you and Sammy are really good together. Please keep it up. So we'll try to do that for Chuck and everybody else.
Yes.
So thanks for listening, Sammy. Let's put a cherry on the sundae.
Say la freaking V, baby.
This is the Just My Type podcast.